like I said, we're working on part 5, and we do have one homework due tonight. That's the homework over parts 1 and 2. It's like the standard 4-question, compute 4 things type of homework. So let's start by going over, reminding ourselves what we did in part 4, and then we'll take a look at the new questions in part 5. So in part 4, we had a couple different graphing questions on this historical rates tab. Let's remind ourselves how that works. So for example, one of the questions was create this graph at the top of our screen, except do it for the INR rate. So if we wanted to do that, we can highlight these first 2 columns, insert a line graph, looks like that, slide this blue column over. There we go. There's our graph for USD for INR over this length of time. Now, there's also a couple follow-ups. This is the graph for the entire 5-year span. There's a follow-up question that says, what about just for the last year? So if you want, you could manually highlight the last year of data, or you could double-click down on the x-axis, change the minimum to also be June 19th, except for 2015, hit enter. There we go. It's a little too flat now, so let's zoom in. Change those bounds, and there we go. There's June 15 to June, or June 2015, June 2016. It seems to be trending downwards. There's that graph. Then there's also some questions on correlation coefficients, and it wanted us to create a scatter plot over these last 2 columns. So once again, we can highlight those. We insert a scatter plot, looks something like that. If we want, we can zoom in to get rid of all this white space. That's a little bit better. There we go. Notice these don't really lie on a line. I mean, they do if you cut off this chunk, but it's more of like almost a parabola, right? So if we compute the correlation coefficient, we don't expect it to be really close to -1 or +1. It's probably closer to 0. Let's compute that really quick. So if we want to do it for all 5 years, we use the Correl function. We highlight this entire column. We highlight that entire column, and look what we get. It is a number closer to 0 than it is to -1 or 1. It's not a very good correlation for that data. On the other hand, if I use only the last 12 months worth of data, so let's see, we're starting in June of 2016, so I'm going to go June 2015. Now, you can manually do that. Another thing you can do is once you do one column, we can look at this address here and see that it's C6 to C58. Now I can just type in the next one, D6, D58. Oh, for the last 12 months, there's a really strong correlation there. And that's more or less all that was going on in part 4. What we're doing today has to do with the final tab of our spreadsheet, this To Dealers tab, and I want to talk about what's going on here. So on this tab, we have all this information. We have 2 dealers. First of all, we got these 3 exchange rates, but now instead of just having like one exchange rate, each one has 2 different numbers. So what's going on here? Well, the idea is that now we're not just getting the true value of our dollars for every euro. What's happening is we're going to a business, and a business is not going to give you the true value of what your currency is worth. For example, in this case, the true value is somewhere in between these 2 amounts here. But what's happening is if, let's say, you have 1 euro, and you say, oh, how many dollars can I get? Well, do you think they're going to give you the lower amount or the higher amount? They're going to give you the lower amount. And that difference is sort of their profit in that case. On the other hand, if you don't have a euro, if you're trying to buy 1 euro, what do you think they're going to charge you? Do you think they're going to charge you a small amount or a higher amount than it's actually worth? Well, they're going to charge you more than it's worth because, again, they need their cut. And so this sort of explains one way to come to the conclusion of how to figure out which number to use. But I want to go over two examples really quick and show you how I like to think about it. So let's start with this guy right here. We have 200 euros, and I want to see how much USD I can get from dealer one. In other words, we're converting 200 euros to US dollars. So I'm going to start this with like pencil and paper work and show you what changes and what doesn't. So if we're doing pencil and paper, I write what I got, 200 euros over 1. I multiply it by this blank fraction. And first thing I do is try to figure out what units have to go on bottom. Well, if euros are on top of the first one, I need euros on top of the second one for the cancellation. Now, if I look at my exchange rate, whichever one I use, it doesn't matter. They're both per 1 euro. So I know a 1 goes on the bottom. Now that I'm at this step, that forces me to pick USD on top. And here is the only new step that's different from part 1. What number do I put next to USD, the bid or the ask? Well, in this case, we're selling our euros and trying to get dollars. And so if I look at these two amounts, what's the business going to do? Are they going to give me a small amount of dollars for my 200 euros, or are they going to give me a lot? Well, I'm the customer. I'm always getting the worst deal. So they're going to give me that. We're going to use the bid in that case. So we fill in the bid. They're both on top. So we multiply straight across. Now that I understand how to do this with pencil and paper, if I want to do this in Excel, I'd write down my 200 and I'd multiply my 200 by the bid, and I'm done. So that's how, I would do it in pencil and paper versus Excel. On the other hand, let's say we start with $200, so the opposite, and we're trying to convert these to euros. Starts the exact same. I draw all my blank fractions. I know I need USD on bottom to make that cancellation. That forces euros on top. And both exchange rates are per 1 euro. So I know there's a 1 next to my euro. And here, again, is the only new step. What goes on bottom? Well, we're buying euros. So what are they going to do? Are they going to charge us a little, or are they going to charge us a lot? They're a business, so they're going to charge us a lot. They're going to use the ask. So we put the ask down there. Since it's on bottom, we're going to divide to get this number. So in Excel, we do our 200 divided by the ask. Now, what I just did, I personally find confusing. So this is my sort of memory trick to figure this out that I personally find easier. If you can figure out that you're going to multiply, this is just like in part 1, you always multiply by the bid. And if you can figure out that division is the correct thing, you always divide by the ask. So if you can get to that step, that doesn't take any new information, right? We did this in part 1. In part 1, we figured out, hey, am I going to divide by that, or am I going to multiply by that? If you can figure that out, you always multiply by the bid, you always divide by the ask.